All right, everybody, we'll go ahead and get started this morning. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. For those that have attended in the past, this is our first event in a little bit of time. The last one we did was sort of at the end of January, early February. We were talking about sales and social. So now we're going to go to a little bit of the softer side, but still equally important when we come around education and awareness. So my name is Chuck Ghost. I'm a co-founder of Indy along with John Palmer. So hopefully we'll get back in the routine of doing these events, and definitely want to thank Easter Seals for hosting. Sarah's been a friend for a long time, right there, and she's always offered the venue to us, and we finally took her up on the offer, and glad to see everybody can make it out here. But we do have a couple introductions. So Dunkin' Donuts gave us a deal on the donuts out there this morning, so we appreciate that. So there's plenty out there for anybody that wants more. 12 Stars Media is in the back videotaping this, so if there's something you want to rewatch or share it with people, we'll be publicizing the YouTube link later on this week. So they've been friends of ours for a long time. And now from Easter Seals, we've got Scott here, who's just going to talk about them briefly. Scott?
Very good. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Yeah, it's got to be interactive. They wanted me to stand by a podium, and it's really hard for me to do that. My name's Scott Fogo. I'm the Vice President of Clinical Services here at Easter Seals Crossroads. When I'm asked how long I've been around, I get really confused because I'm what we call a boomeranger around here. I started my practice here 26 years ago as a medical social worker, and I've been back for about 8, so they tell me it's about 10. But it's a long enough span to know a little about what we do here, and I just wanted to share a little story. I thought, okay, I'm challenged to talk to social media people about what we do. So it had to be in the form of a story. Well, when you leave our building, I challenge you to kind of sneak to the north exit. It's our employee exit. We have this great collage, and one of the pictures in that collage is a young man, I'm going to try to balance this out, named Brandon. If you know Brandon, just hold the climax of the story to the end, okay? I worked with Brandon a number of years ago when he was here in preschool. The unique thing about Brandon is, you can tell perhaps by the photo, is he was born without arms and legs. One of the unique moments of my life is when I was working with him in preschool, and I had to say to him, Brandon, don't throw your arms. Brandon didn't like his prosthetic arms, and when he was upset, he would throw them at classmates and teachers. And those are sentences you just don't think you're ever going to say in life, right? Brandon, don't throw your arms. Well, Brandon is a young man that has been around Easter Seals Crossroads for a long time. And I wanted to share his story because it kind of emulates what we're about. We literally serve people of all ages, babies through senior adults. And one of the things that I like to say is that Easter Seals can kind of be like that rehab home for a person with a disability. Because we do serve the Brandons of the world, but then when Brandon grows up, I'm trying to do one hand, we can also help Brandon when he wants to learn how to drive. Okay, and so we work closely with Brandon as he learned how to drive a high-tech vehicle. We did all the work. I'm seeing people knowing Brandon. Okay, yeah. I also got to know Brandon because he had a service dog, and I had a facility service dog that I worked with for years. The great part about Brandon is he's a real kind of manly man, loved wrestling, all those kinds of very athletic guy. The funny part for Brandon is when he got a service dog, it's a beautiful black lab named Elaine, which was hilarious at first because, you know, this macho guy with this service dog named Elaine, he did start liking that because it instantly kind of had the crowds thinking that he always was moving with a special woman in his life. So it was Brandon and Elaine, so it was kind of funny. But Brandon became, again, a dear friend. Also a guy that I got to know because he went to Purdue and Ball State, and he wanted to do an internship here at Easter Seals Crossroads, and I wouldn't let him, because I thought that was a little cliche. We don't want this guy with a disability doing a marketing, media, public relations internship. Now I said to him, I get that someday you're going to come back and you're going to be my boss, so be kind to me, be gentle. But again, Brandon continues to work through lots of different challenges that he continues to overcome, and I'm excited to say that recently, Brandon announced his engagement, which is also very cool. So the honor of standing with Brandon and his family, and if you know the Scott family, they're an amazing group of people. But it kind of represents what Easter Seals Crossroads is about. We don't have single touch points often with people. We walk with you along the way and face with you the challenges that you may face. One of the things that I was totally moved by and it struck me when I read this on Brandon's Facebook page. Brandon, the guy born without arms and legs, on his Facebook page it says, "Step into my shoes and walk the life I'm living. And if you get as far as I am, just maybe you'll see how strong I really am. So thank you for being here at Easter Seals Crossroads. Learn more about what we do through our website and our tweets and all the great things that Sarah does. And know that if you or your family member ever face the challenge of disability, illness, or injury, Easter Seals Crossroads is here for you. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. I'm going to let Jeremy Williams introduce our panel here in a second, but I'll introduce Jeremy. He's a board member of ours, works at Fusion, and a lot of the credit for this event goes to Jeremy. He helped find the speakers, he found the venue, organized it all. So thank you, Jeremy, for doing this, and I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Chuck. Well, like Chuck mentioned, the last event we had was really focused on social selling, using social media to actually, earn money. So one thing that I was looking for at this event was trying to take a different tact and look at how people use social media for more of awareness and education. You're not necessarily trying to sell a product or trying to sell a service, but just helping people to understand what it is you do and better educate people about you and your organization. So we have three great panelists with us today. We have Sarah Croft over on your left over there. And Sarah actually does work here at Easter Seals Crossroads. We have Jerry Matczak, who's actually my boss at the client site that I'm with at Eli Lilly at their Clinical Open Innovation division. And Jordan Witt, who serves several roles, works during the day for the Presbyterian Church of U.S.A., and he also works for the Red Cross and Indiana Department of Homeland Security, I believe. So to kick things off, I'm just going to have everybody give a brief introduction about who they are, what they do, and how they utilize, very briefly, awareness and education marketing through social media. So, Jordan, do you want to kick things off?
Early.
Okay.
All right. Is that working?
Yeah.
Can you hear me good? Okay. I'm Jordan Witt, as Jeremy said. I work for Presbyterian Church U.S.A. I don't have to go through all the things that I work for because he did that. I'm a little nervous because I'm usually behind the scenes helping set up these events and not usually speaking to people. In Presbyterian Church USA, I work for funds development, which is obviously funds development. Man, this is tough. Work for the Presbyterian Mission Agency, and our goal is to help people around the world in various ways. Presbyterian disaster assistance, self-development of people. This is a group that partners with organizations across the country and across the world to help people empower themselves. What I do is I go around to all these projects that people are supporting through their generous gifts, and I go around and I shoot video, I talk to people, get to know what they're doing, and then I come back and I try to tell those stories. And that's really what the most important thing is, I think, is to tell the stories of the people that you're helping. Let those stories speak for themselves. If you're doing a really great job at helping people, then people are going to pick up on that. And can you repeat the question one more time, because I'm totally getting off track?
No, I think you got it. I just was asking kind of how you utilize social media for awareness and education.
Yeah, and with the Red Cross, I mean, it's basically disaster-based. So if there's a disaster that happens, we're tweeting out, please help, this is how you can help, please give, please text to give. This is what we're doing in this situation. Tornado just hit, these are the people that we're helping. Just making sure that people know that you exist and that you are making a difference. And if you care about what you're doing, the people, like I said, are going to pick up on that. It's really important that you care about what you're putting out there. And I hope that was helpful.
That's great, Jerry.
Hi, I'm Jerry Matczak with Eli Lilly and Company. I suppose most folks in the room know who Eli Lilly and Company is. I see that this conference room was donated by Lilly. I'm part of a group that's very niche within Lilly. You probably haven't heard of us. We are part of Lilly's research and development organization, and we're focused specifically on the part of development where drugs are tested in human beings, which happens to be among the most expensive and has some opportunities for efficiency to deliver better medicines to patients faster, right? And we know that historically drug companies have done this work. It's been very scientific, it's been very siloed. You have doctors and PhDs and meds, and you have investigator sites where these clinical trials are conducted, but it hasn't been very open. And it hasn't really taken into account the voice that the public could have to help change some of the fundamental processes. So we started as a bit of an experimentation a group called Clinical Open Innovation. And our objectives are to connect with people and gain insight and voice into the drug development processes, the clinical trial processes. And fundamental to that is being open and connecting and engaging. So we have a foundational piece of that, which is social media. My role is entitled Community Manager, and that's very intentional, right? It's not about marketing or not about trying to sell something. It's about building community around common ideas. And if there's a mantra that we have, it's that I have anyway, it's a relationship before transaction. And actually that's how our lives typically work. Think of how you work with your family or in your social organizations or your churches, right? The relationships you build are really the foundation for everything that happens. I know before the age of 30, if any of my friends were going to move, I would offer to help them move. And frankly, that's probably one of my least favorite things to do. A stranger on the street were asked me to help them move, I would ask them how much they're going to pay me and what kind of insurance are they going to. But if a friend needed help, I would help them. If you develop relationships, you can have a lot of good things happen. And that's foundational to our work. Part of that also is to make people aware and to educate them on some of these very niche research and development, technically confounding processes in research and developing new drugs. It's not like falling off a log. It is very, very challenging and difficult. You need to build credibility. You need to build awareness. And foundationally, we do that through our social media as well. So amplifying a lot of what other people say, bringing to light great articles that help people understand what it means to be in a clinical trial and the value of that, and being transparent about where some of the issues are, we find to be tremendously connecting. I've probably spoken enough, and I'll pass it off to Sarah.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Jerry.
Well, I have to ask, how many people knew who Easter Seals Crossroads was before you signed up today? Just a show of hands. That's pretty good. I'm glad to see that. Because typically I'd say when I'm out in the community and talking to people about who I am and what I do, and I say I work at Easter Seals Crossroads, they get some kind of mix of, do you do something around the holiday, around Easter? What I don't understand. It's kind of interesting. Though we've been around for almost 80 years now. And so one of the reasons why I started social media for the organization was because of that fact. I kind of got tired of being out there talking to people about who I am and what I do, and nobody knew who Easter Seals Crossroads was unless you're maybe over the age of 65. And you used to get those lilies in the mail when you donated, and people would put those on the envelopes that they would send. That's where the lily part of it came from. And so we saw social media as a great way to elevate our brand awareness in the community and let people know who we are, why we're out there. And I do that a lot through becoming a subject matter expert. So because the name doesn't tell you a lot about who we are, what we do, I try to go look for the content similar to Eli Lilly, where we're being able to tell people about those types of services that we provide, so that when they think of assistive technology, they think of driver's education, they think of autism services, they see that I'm out there producing that content, and then it's relatable to them, and they're able to say, oh yeah, I think Easter Seals Crossroads does something with that. Let's give them a call. I think we have a reason to get in touch with them. So that's a huge part of it for me, especially knowing that social media is used by a younger generation. And so if I can get you in the door here to learn about us, then I can have you as a potential volunteer and maybe down the road a potential donor. So if I can just get the word out about who we are, then I'm able to start that cultivation process much sooner.
Can I go again?
Sure.
No.
Okay.
No, I feel like I fumbled that first question because I was put on the spot here trying to answer it first. I wanted to give a little bit of background of what I actually do via social media. I didn't really say a whole lot of that. With Presbyterian Church USA, what we do via social media is, number one, tell people what we're doing, have them see all the great things that we're accomplishing. With the Red Cross, it's kind of the same thing, but it's also very much more donation driven, very much this is how your money can help. This is what your money is doing to help the community. With Homeland Security, it's actually much more dialogue based with people during a disaster. It's answering some silly questions regarding. Right now, we're actually in the middle of one of the largest nuclear disaster drills in the history of the country, and it's going on all this week and next month. And one of the big things that people are asking is, how am I going to get help? I'm stuck in my house. This nuclear bomb has gone off, and we've got to deal with some really hard stuff. But it's keeping people calm and aware that there are people out there to help them, and it's a lot of fun. So, anyway.
So can you guys each tell us about a
Somebody go
recent
first.
success that you've seen in your office through the use of social media and through the things that you do?
Sure, you can go first if you want. So one of the projects that I actually started out with as an intern is called INDATA. It's the Indiana Assistive Technology Act, and they cover the entire state of Indiana with assistive technology services. So if you have a disability and you just got a new job and you're in a wheelchair and you need accommodation for your desk so that it can move up and down and fit you appropriately, that's something that we would go in and recommend. And with that, with technology, just as like we're here today with social media, there's always something new to talk about, and there's always something new related to assistive technology and what works for people with disabilities. So as soon as the new iPad comes out and the iOS system with accessibility features, we're on it, we're ready to talk about it. And so we started these tech tip videos on YouTube, and it was literally my director that came to me and said, you are going to take a flip cam and you're going to film me doing something for 5 minutes, and we're going to put it on YouTube, and we're going to just throw it out there and see what happens. And that way we could explain visually. We also could put captions on it, make it accessible for people, and just really quickly let them know about these new technology features. And I spoke with him yesterday because I've since moved into a different portion of the agency, and so I'm not on that project as much anymore. But he told me that he has 185,000 views on YouTube right now over the past 3 years from all of those videos combined. And I just think that that is outstanding because people now are, when they're looking for something that they might need assistance with, they don't know what it is, they stumble upon this video, it grabs them, it pulls them in, and then we're able to say, oh yeah, okay, I get that, but I need a little bit more info. So now I'm going to pick up the phone and call them, and now we start the evaluation process, and then we've brought them in as a referral. So it's getting the word out about those tools that people may not know, but we know that they're going on the internet to look for them. So I have to give them a shout out for that. And also they started a podcast recently, and they became the #1 podcast on about.com for blindness and assistive technology, which I think is really, really cool too. And it's syndicated over 185 countries or something like that. So being able to just use that as an opportunity to tell people about how you provide services, kind of like Jordan was talking about, how you share the story of how you help people through videos, through social media, then you're able to grab them in a different way. Because I think all three of us have that 140 character problem. We can't even put our mission statement in one tweet. So we have to be able to use other social media forums so that we can do that.
Yeah, Sarah's conversation makes me think of something that's going on right now that I think is very valuable. So Sarah talked about the 140 character limit, and I think as you think about social media, I think you want to think broader than just social media. Social media is a means to do wonderful, wonderful things, and it's sort of this generative process that can help you do things in person. You have events like this where we're meeting people face to face. You can have people amplifying and speaking on behalf of you. I'll tell a quick story. It'll start last November, but it's continuing to unfold now. I've been fortunate to get to know a number of very active patients who are e-patients. They're sort of leading the way in the Twitter sphere around patients' rights. Some of those rights might be associated with, hey, give me my data. Give me my electronic health record data. And there are a lot of reasons why that's really, really important. It might be, boy, I want more control over my care decisions with my provider. And frankly, none of those on the surface sounds like much about what we're doing. They're not talking about clinical trials. They're not talking about clinical research and how drugs are developed. When you start to touch those people and meet them in their world, you realize your messages are very similar. We want more engagement from patients in the drug development process. They want to be engaged, active patients. So we build relationships with a number of those folks. And last year in November, we had the first ever in any pharma company that we know of, a patient at the center of clinical trial workshop where we brought a number of these engaged patients into Lilly, and they live tweeted and live blogged conversations we had that they cared about associated with clinical research. What's the consent process to join a clinical trial? How do you become aware of what a clinical trial is? How do I find out whether there are enough seats at the table for a particular trial? And we sat down with Lilly executive leadership and these patients face to face and worked through some of these problems, talked about the issues. You saw tears in people's eyes, both from the patients who were there and the Lilly executives, as you heard about a Lilly exec's mother who was misdiagnosed with cancer and had no treatment options. And boy, if they could have found a clinical trial for them, it would have changed their lives potentially. She's now gone, right? These things are very connecting, and social media is a sort of the fabric upon which this can be built. These sort of relationships can be woven. That was a wonderful conference. We had 1.9 million impressions just from the patient activists tweeting. We certainly participated, right? But these people are active. They're known. They're spreading the word. They're challenging us, which is actually part of the whole social contract, I think, when you're dealing in social media. How that's unfolding now, and I don't want to take up too much more time, but since then we've got to know some of these other patient advocates, and there's a major conference in September at Stanford School of Medicine called Medicine X. This is a conference that has more social activity than TED or Health 2.0. And as a result of our willingness to engage with them and be honest partners, they trust us, we trust them. We're creating a workshop at that conference where we're going to have even more active patients, and we're going to dig again more deeply into this notion of clinical trials and understand how we can gain additional voice and make change associated with clinical research so that we can get better treatments to patients faster. And I'd suggest that social media, it would not happen without social media. Social media is necessary, but it's not sufficient. You need to have interactions that go beyond social media. You need to be able to pick up the phone and call someone after you've tweeted back and forth at your 140 character limit, and then you can have reached deep conversations that can result in things you can't possibly predict.
Talking successes, correct? I'm going to probably come back to this a lot, and that's the power of using video via social media. A couple years ago, our strategy was to create one video per fundraising drive that we did, and it kind of highlights some of the things that the money would do, and it was very general, very surface level. And we were spending, $20,000 on the video. It was kind of ridiculous, actually, and they weren't being talked about. People weren't really caring. And so we looked at that again, and we said, what can we do to really drive engagement? And what it came down to is we personally, the people who are working in the office, have to care more about the people that we're helping. So we revamped the strategy, and what that turned into was personally going out to these different locations, like I said earlier, and meeting these people, getting to know them, and getting to hear their stories one-on-one, and building that relationship, and investing in them, and having them trust you. And then when we put those stories back in video, and not only did we cut our budget by 90% or something crazy, but the engagement levels were so much higher because people could tell that this wasn't surface level stuff. These are people telling their stories directly to the people who are giving them money. Your gift helped me because this is exactly what I'm able to do now because you gave money during this campaign. Please continue to give. The best thing that you can do, I think, is to have somebody else tell your story for you. Let the people who empower the people that you're helping to tell that story. Let them trust them enough to let them tell that. And I think that your engagement rates will definitely increase. So,
great.
Yeah.
So I think one thing I've really definitely gathered is all of you have been talking about going out and directly meeting with people. Even though you're using social media, it's not strictly a sitting in front of a computer and tweeting and Facebook posting and blogging and things like that. Have any of you had any trouble with higher-ups or people, bosses, I suppose, who maybe are not as supportive of social media and of your efforts? And how have you gone about kind of helping them to understand or convincing them that this is an important thing to continue with?
Sure, yeah. So it's funny, I have to pick on Scott because he was probably one of my most difficult to convince that social media is important. We went through this struggle of, oh my gosh, we're going to get out there and people are going to, what if people say really mean things about us online? And what are we going to do about that? And it was understanding that that conversation is going to happen whether it's online or it's offline, and you are giving them an opportunity to be able to enter that discussion when you have it online. So if you give people a platform to come and talk to you, then you can talk back to them, and you can start this process of, oh, okay, well, let's talk about this further. Let's get on the phone and discuss what the issue was, and we can resolve it from there. And funny enough, for the past several years that I've been doing this, we have never had one single negative complaint come through us on social media. I don't know how that's happened, but we haven't. So being able to take that leap of faith and understanding that it's this two-way communication street. It's not just let's just throw information out there and then people are gonna, say horrible things about you. We've been around for 80 years, so if people are saying horrible things about us, I think we would know about it by now, and we would have resolved that issue. So yeah, it was difficult in the beginning, but we got a lot of board buy-in, and we were able to just kind of test the waters and say, we'll just go out there and we'll try it, and if something doesn't seem right, seems difficult, then we can scale it back a little bit. We also knew that, honestly, we only really focus our efforts on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. I don't spread myself thin across a bunch of other platforms because even though social media comes before other parts of my job title, it is one of many things that I do here. So I have to say that you can only take on as much as you're willing to accept, and that helps people kind of control it a little bit more when you say, okay, we'll just try a couple of platforms and see how it goes, and then we can expand from there as time moves on. So.
We've never had trouble getting anybody to convince that social media was wonderful. That's a lie. I am in a very regulated environment with lots of rules, with a bunch of highly analytical people. We are research and developers to create science, to develop drugs that are going to save the world. Right? and there's a good bit of truth in all of that. I don't mean to sound completely facetious. At the same time, there are lots of rules and regulations and federal laws to be aware of. When you're dealing with clinical trials, you must report anything that is an adverse event. You cannot bias the market towards a drug before it's approved. There are just millions of rules. Jeremy's become steeped in them, much to his chagrin on occasion. But what we have been able to do is show people through stories the value of connecting people socially. We are all creatures who listen for stories. We live stories. That's how we connect with things emotionally. And I'm very fortunate to have, all the way up to the vice president level, people who appreciate these stories. And if I would say there's one thing that will be helpful, is share when you have a good story to tell. If you had an interaction with someone and you have that little ding in your head that goes off and says, wow, that was sweet. That was exactly the way I want things to go. Share that. It's likely these people that the ding will go off in their head too, and they'll start sharing it. Have them be a part of the story. There are many, many different ways, and there are folks here who are marketeers. I'm not. I'm a IT guy and a researcher and that sort of thing by trade. There are lots of ways to calculate return on investment and do a lot of different modeling, but I think none of that is important unless there are really, really powerful stories to sell, and the more you can engage people in those stories, the better. Probably for me, some of the most significant days are when our VP decided to comment on our blog, or reach out to someone who guest blogged and said, trying to put this in a nice way, they were an ALS patient who lost their husband. And he reached out and he said, well, blankety blank ALS, we got to cure this, right? These are the type of things that connect you and make it worthwhile and show people the real value of what you're doing. So kind of stay in the trenches. You're going to do things day by day, be a little bit smart about what you want to share, but when you have those little connecting moments, those little dings in your head, it's likely that will ding with other people as well.
Sorry,
That's fine.
we keep kind of coming back to the same themes.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what the exact
Well,
question was.
the question was just if you've had any trouble getting approval from higher ups to do social
Yeah.
media, or people not really understanding it or believing in it, and have you countered that?
I guess I've been really lucky because the situation that I came to, the Presbyterian Church U.S.A, was one that their Twitter and Facebook and all that was just something that they kind of touched every once in a while. It wasn't something that they put a lot of focus on. And so when I came onto the scene after having some of the experience that I had, there was really nowhere to go but up. Even just touching it like once a day was so much more than what they had done. So I've been pretty lucky. As long as we keep showing growth and engagement rates and our audience levels, then I really don't have to do a whole lot of convincing, which is kind of nice, even regardless of the actual numbers. But I do want to say a couple of things or just harp on a couple of things that they had said a second ago. If I can remember exactly what they were, and I'm sure it'll come back to me as soon as I put the microphone down. Yep, it'll come back to me. And, yeah, all right, here you go. Sorry.
Well, while you're thinking of that, then the next question will be, what is the most challenging part of using social media for awareness and education that each of you have experienced over your time doing this?
Sure. So I feel like there's more challenges than I'd like to admit sometimes, but I think the one that everybody in this room can most relate to is the fact that there's quite a lot of debate going on about autism and vaccines right now, just to be honest. And while we are not a research facility and we're not looking at treating autism, we're looking at making someone who has autism live a better, more independent life. You know, we've accepted that you have autism and now we're going to give you the support services that you need in your life. And I can't really talk about those topics online. Those are not things that I want to enter into discussion with people because it's not my opinion. It's not Scott's opinion. It's not our president's opinion whether vaccines cause autism or not. That's a whole nother area that we don't talk about because as soon as I start getting into those subjects, even though those are the things that people really want to talk about and really want to get our opinion on, that's not appropriate for us to discuss. So that's one issue that I find kind of struggling because I start to talk about autism services, and we actually have a Twitter account just dedicated to our autism services, and it gets asked these questions about vaccines and looking for information and studies, and I say that's not something that we do, and you'll have to find that information out, talk to your doctor, and make a rightful decision based on that. That's not something that we can talk about. So that's one area that we really struggle with is getting people to understand we're here to talk about what happens after someone has a disability and how we can help them, not treating or curing something like that. There's also just the stigma of disability in general. We tend to go and say people first language, which means we would say someone has autism, not that's an autistic person, even though you'll hear that on the news quite often. We try to educate that the person comes first before the disability. But then there's just the question of whether or not someone wants to be designated as a person with a disability. And so our national brand, because if you're aware, Easter Seals is, we're an affiliate of a national organization. There's Easter Seals all over the country. There's one in Evansville, one in Fort Wayne. We're the largest here in central Indiana. But they kind of are looking at what that means now. What does it mean to have a disability, and do people really want to be associated with that? And we have an event where we have keynote speakers come in, a large fundraising event, and they may have lost limbs. Like last year we had Stephanie Deckard, who was injured in the Henryville tornado because she covered her kids and lost her legs. And we thought, man, she's such a powerful speaker. She does not see herself as a person with a disability, and she doesn't like to identify herself as that. And so we have to be very careful when we're speaking with people, and it presents a challenge for even the people that we work with and help. They don't want to be associated with that, and so because of HIPAA and privacy practices, and I have to get a photo release sign before we just take a picture of a cute kid in the lobby that we want to talk about. Some people don't want to share that information, and it's not because they don't love us and appreciate what we do. It's because, I just don't like that stigma of having a child with a disability. My child has autism, not a disability. And so that's, I think, one of our major challenges right now is using social media to talk about how we can help people. And we say we are disability services, but it really means so much more than that. So that's a main challenge for us.
I think of challenges in a couple different categories. I think there are some operational challenges, which I'm not going to go into, and you guys probably know a lot about that. How do you get your reach, and how do you ensure you're known, and all that sort of stuff, and that's really important. But what I think are the bigger challenges for us are how do we establish voice and credibility and uniqueness in this very broad, very loud, very swift-moving sphere associated with healthcare. And how do we help people understand that we care about some of the same things that they care about? And that takes a lot of time and effort. There's really a lot of effort and work to be listening honestly, openly, and connecting authentically into the conversation. I compare that with, hey, if you want me to talk about us all day and talk about how everything is wonderful and good, I could do that nonstop, right? We could talk about ourselves, right? We could do that. We know ourselves pretty well. It's a lot harder to be listening and focused on connecting with people authentically. And when that happens, there's always some risk of something going wrong. In my world particularly, there are rules and regulations. I've had people say, I want to talk to you about lily drug X, Y, and Z. I cannot do that. I'm not a medical professional. It's not ethical or legal for me to do that. And it would be so easy to in 140 characters, right? I need to be able to go offline and say, look, I appreciate your question. I'm not a healthcare professional. There is a service that can provide you that information. I do want to talk to you about what I think I heard you say you have some voice into and some interest in, and offer to continue that conversation. That sort of vigilance is a type of listening that's beyond any listening program. It's beyond Radius 6 and all those good things that are out there. That's about having your brain be engaged in the social stream, and that is not easy. I think you can do traditional marketing, which is push marketing, and hey, your brand messages are such. That's not so hard. But to really listen and respond and engage is hard and challenging. It's also the most rewarding thing when you do it right, and you'll know when you do. And I would focus on that and be really, really conscious of it.
I'm writing things down now to make it a little easier to remember exactly what the question is. I thank my wife back there for telling me that I should do that. Challenges. Presbyterian Church, U.S.A. The average Presbyterian is a 72-year-old woman. Okay, so there you go. That's a big challenge. And the Twitter people in Presbyterian land are already are a very, very close-knit group of younger Presbyterians, but that is a tough nut to crack, because those people already have these alliances. When I came on board, they looked at the Presbyterian Church USA overall organization as kind of like this bureaucratic, there's those Louisville people, because the office is in Louisville that I work out of. So to actually get into that little circle, I had to meet with these people one-on-one. We had this big national conference, and I just went to the tweet up, and I'm like, I work for PCUSA, I'm a staff member, and they're like, oh, you're a staff guy. But to building those relationships one-on-one and becoming friends with these people actually did a lot of good at helping me communicate with them via Twitter, and then leveraging the impact that they have on Twitter to spread our word for us. These are people who that are well trusted in the organization, former pastors, former moderators. If you're a Presbyterian structure, then that would make sense, but you're probably not. When it comes to Red Cross and IDHS, I'll leave IDHS out for a second, but a lot of these organizations that we work for in nonprofit land, one of the big struggles is how do we ask for gifts, or can we ask for gifts? A lot of organizations are really shy about that, but that's really, really important, is to learn how to ask in a way that people feel like they want to give. It's not just bugging in with please give, please give, please give, but again, coming back to here's exactly why your gift is making a difference. Here's somebody telling you how your gift changed their life, that kind of thing. The great content will overcome those challenges. That's really what you got to key in on.
So what are the key either metrics or things that you guys look at to tell you that you've been successful in your efforts? For blog posts, is it number of views, number of shares, is it retweets, is it things like that, or are they more, less measurable things that you just kind of get a sense back that you're doing well? How do you measure those things?
I don't particularly like to drill it down to numbers, even though I think leadership-wise, excuse me, my executive leadership really wants to see, they're very data-driven people. They want to know exactly what these numbers are, yet I'm not sure they can also translate what those numbers really mean without putting context behind it. So even though I say, 180,000 views on YouTube, what does that really get you? So for me, it's all about the partnerships. Kind of as Jerry mentioned, with that really good feeling you have, when something works out, right, and you made that conversation and you brought people in and you're engaging with them. I like it when I've become so much of a subject matter expert on Twitter that people are now contacting me to share the things that they think I want to tell other people out there. So they say, hey, I found this really great story, and I think you might like to put this on Facebook. It relates to who we are and what we do. And I'm like, that's great. I'm so glad that you got it. It makes sense now. So that's a huge thing for me. Also, being able to, obviously, I think all of us here today can say, well, we're here, so that feels really successful, right, that we're talking about these kind of things. So I had to put that out there. But a lot of our community partnerships that going back to being around for 80 years, my main goal is just to get more brand awareness out there, who we are, what we do. So when I have people like Nicole Masenzik that reaches out and says, oh, I saw you tweeted about this bingo event, and I would really love to be part of that. How can I be part of that with you? And now she's become a brand ambassador for us. So getting people on board that can share our message now is even more important to me that we're getting out there in their reach. But to talk about numbers, when I'm looking at what I'm doing every day, am I being successful? One of my main priorities is to drive traffic to our website. So I do that through obviously tweeting and Facebooking out links of important content that come back to us. And now I can say that Facebook and Twitter are always in our top 5 referrals, which is great. I can tell that my blog traffic is just about 1/5 of the overall traffic for our website, and that's just a little tiny portion of everything that's on there. So being able to say those things does make me feel, okay, we're really doing a good job. But it is all about the contextual stuff. It's about those conversations. It's about that natural engagement, that sentiment you feel about your brand, how hard it is to judge whether people feel good about you or don't feel good about you based on what they're saying. So being able to facilitate that conversation is really the most important thing for me in terms of measuring success.
Yeah, I don't know that there's anyone in the room whose business is built on achieving goals like 1.7 million Twitter followers. Those are not the sort of goals that businesses have. However, there are leading indicators that social media as a means to an end can sort of portend, if you will. And that's the way I look at social media. So the numbers are important. You want to continue to grow. You want to make sure your numbers are going up. You want to be creating content that people engage with. And those are fundamentally important. And we look at those all the time. But what's more important that gets closer to the end, and if the end is how do we develop develop new drugs faster, better for the patient population, how do we measure impact on that? Well, I think often it's through stories. And we had a nice little story. We last year simply blogged about someone else's blog post, right? And this fellow had written about these micro-expert patients who understand a lot about cancer and how those people could help inform understanding of the biology of cancer, and couldn't drug developers leverage this information? Well, it so happens that this fellow's name was Ronnie Zeiger, and he was Google's ex-chief health strategist, right? We called him a she in the blog post because it was R-O-N-I. We spelled his name wrong, right? We did so much wrong in our little blog post. Still, Ronnie reached out to us from LinkedIn, and we started a conversation and built a relationship that now has directly, through a lot of different methods, helping us develop drugs better for patients more quickly. They're now a partner as we create these conferences. They share their insight with us. We share insight with them. We're thinking about ways that they can help engage in our Lilly portfolio, and how would that look like? How do you have these micro experts help drug development go more quickly? And that's all because we wrote a really crappy blog post. But we did talk about something that was of interest to us, it was clearly of interest to him, and it was able to spark this conversation. And that story has led to vice presidents going out on a plane and sitting in a garage in Ronnie's startup company talking about ways that we can develop drugs for patients quicker, faster, better. And that's really the indication of success. That's not a leading indicator. That's the end goal. That's what we want to do. And social media is integral to that story.
I'm really awful at looking at metrics and making sense of them, to be honest with you. I don't really pay a whole lot of attention to that. I know that if you spend more money on Facebook ads, you're going to get more reach. I know that. But here's the thing that I look at, is that there's a thing called organic reach. That's the money that's the reach that you have without spending money. So if I look at a Facebook ad report and I see, 70% of that was organic reach. I know I had some seriously great content, because these are people who maybe I paid to reach them, but then they went and shared it with their friends because they thought that what we're saying was great. So organic reach is one of the biggest things that I look at personally. Also, if I'm at a huge national-wide convention and I talk to somebody and they know my story or what my office does before I tell them, then that's a huge sign of success. And if they know that what we're doing out there before I even say this is what we do, then man, we're doing a good job. And And if I'm looking at my Twitter stream and I'm looking at people that I follow or that follow me, and I say, well, I've talked to this person, I know this person does this offline. The number of people that I can say that I have a relationship with outside of just social media, that's another huge thing that I look at is, do they know me? Do I know them? Have we talked? Do we have dialogue? We try really hard to know the people that we're trying to talk to, because then we can say, then we can look at the empathy thing and say, you know what, this is probably what they want to hear from us. This is how they want to be interacted with, and then we can go about doing that. So.
Great. We'll get one final question before we open it up to see if anyone has questions in the audience. And it's kind of a simple one. Do any of you have anything else to add? Is there anything else that we didn't ask about that you feel like would be helpful for people as they're kind of getting started or doing more awareness and education?
I have to say, and I think this just applies to social media in general, whether it's for awareness and education or sales, but you gotta love it. You gotta get in there and enjoy it, and if you don't enjoy it, you're not gonna be that authentic voice. You're not gonna be able to really care about having those types of conversations with people, and when you love it, just like any part of your job, right? When you love it, it makes it so much easier. But that authenticity and positivity that you feel when you're doing social media, then it goes out much further than you think. Other people can sense that in your post, and they can see your excitement and read the smile on your face, just as you were having when you were typing this out on your keyboard. So that's a huge thing for me, and I've been through with these other Twitter accounts that our agency has, some people that love it and some people that don't, and I can very clearly see who loves it and who doesn't love it because of the type of content that they're putting out there. So that's a huge thing for me. And I would also say, just like I think we all mentioned here, is to go back to that metrics, is to stop getting so hung up in that part. I don't spend money on any Facebook or Twitter advertising at all. Shame on me, maybe, but maybe part of it is my lack of desire to give Facebook money, period, for anything. So I hate that. What does it say now at the bottom? It used to say boost post, but served, this, like you got served, you know, that kind of thing. It just, I don't know, it kills me. But I think you can certainly, if that's right for you and what you're trying to do, but just seeing, extra Facebook likes on your page and likes on your post is not as same as that comment that somebody leaves. And for me, it's when I post a picture of what kids were doing at summer camp that day, and mom sees it. And mom says, oh gosh, my kid just came home saying that he had the best day ever at Camp Ability today. And she goes and comments on that post. And that's the stuff that really gets me going. That's what I get excited about. So pushing those types of conversations, I think, is more important than saying, yeah, I got 20 likes on this post today, or it got retweeted a couple times. It's all that other stuff that happens that's so much more important in the end than that overall number.
Yeah, if there's one thing that I would focus on is meeting people where they are, and there's a certain humility that you need in order to do that. You need to, particularly in the social stream, if you want to connect with people, put yourself in their shoes and speak in their language as much as you possibly can, and do that with a sincerity and sort of the flip side of that, and with a confidence, right? There is something you probably have to offer that conversation, but know that it's not your conversation. It's a broader conversation, particularly when it comes to education and awareness. You know the stuff, right? You're looking to help people understand in their frame of reference so that there can be action taken and good can come out of the engagement. And that's not easy. And when I see social media gone wrong, I think it's because people aren't doing that. I need to be very aware that despite what I'd like to think, pharma is kind of not the highest trusted industry in the world. In fact, a couple years ago, we were second to the worst, least trusted, right? And I could give you a million reasons why I don't think that's correct. But the fact is, I need to acknowledge that, and I need to be aware that that perception exists. And then I need to put myself out there with a voice and hopefully an authenticity and hopefully something to add to a conversation that might be made up of people who think that. And that takes a kind of humility. It also takes a kind of bravery and courage. And I would suggest that that's pretty important as you engage in social media if you want to be successful.
Yep. Make your brand the people that are behind your brand. I know that may not make a lot of sense, but when you're on social media, you're not just speaking for your company or organization, but you're speaking as a human. So be willing to be a human to people. Be willing to be wrong. Be willing to have a dialogue about something that doesn't even have anything to do with what you're doing. Just jump into conversation and share an opinion every once in a while. People really like to know that your organization is not a spam bot, sending out just random stats and white pages and here's what we're doing. They want to see people who do believe in what they're doing, and that makes engagement a whole lot easier. So, what are the questions?
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
This one's probably more for Jordan, but obviously with social media increasingly becoming part of an organization's crisis communication strategy, it serves as a listening post, also a vehicle to deliver news to followers. What sort of touch points, I guess, or guardrails with sensitive events like with the Red Cross disasters or things that could potentially be seen as sensitive, or if there's a disaster, what sort of process do you guys have or has been discussed as far as what can we put out versus what we should hold back on, as far as if there's somebody that's been injured, or I guess what type of discussions do you have internally about that?
Can you
Repeat the question. So the question was, especially for Jordan and examples of disasters and things like that, how are you careful about the things that you talk about in social media? Where's the line basically of what you can say and what can't you say?
Yeah, that's a good question. Basically, our rule is don't show faces of people who have been affected or who are currently, vulnerable. Don't show those vulnerable people. Don't give personally identifying information. Like, don't throw out personal names. Don't give out exact addresses. Other than that, if you want to show the back of or the front of a Red Cross person, in the back of somebody they're helping, you can do that. I mean, you can definitely show that you're making an impact and making a difference, but you don't want to show faces. You don't want to give out personal information. That's it's pretty commonsensical. But is that kind of what you're looking for?
So I just internally, what type of questions do you guys discuss? Or is that even a conversation?
It really isn't. It really is just kind of this is how it works. What are you working for?
I work for a company called Legion, and we're trying to stand up our crisis communications plans for manufacturing. So, for instance, if there's a event at a plant or something like that, we want to be able to speak to the news portion of it, but yet we still have to have guardrails in place, so we just don't have anyone who's connected to the company sort of posting stuff. So I guess building that chain of being able to vet out the content and making sure it's going through the proper channels rather than just having a sort of free-for-all.
Yep. Just make sure that you have permission from the person if you're telling like a personal story. Make sure that you have media releases, image releases, that kind of thing.
Any other questions? Yes.
Hi, my question is, has there ever been, just primarily focusing on social media, has there ever been like a crisis that you faced where you had to use a crisis communication plan, and if you did you follow it or deviate from it?
So the question was, as far as crisis communication goes, A, do you have one in place? B, have you had an instance where you've had to use it? And then C, when that's happened, did you utilize it according to the plan, or did you deviate from that plan?
I'll go first because I think I probably have the least to offer. So we haven't had many crises, right? We've had conversations. We've had some sort of inflammatory things. We've had people spam about a particular drug that Lilly used to manufacture years ago, and lawyer up and join all of that sort of thing. But I think we've had enough context, and through our internal policies and procedures and how we put together our internal social media quality plan, we've been able to deal with them very directly. So we haven't had to escalate wildly. We also have colleagues in Lilly. I think Greg Kuderman is someone who spoke to this group a couple years ago, and others with our sister Twitter handles. If we have something that comes up, we'll kind of huddle with them pretty quickly. We haven't had that sort of crisis, and I think others may be in a different situation, Jordan particularly, but maybe Sarah, you can comment.
Yeah, I'd say luckily we have not been in that situation, but just like our general marketing outside of social media, if there were something, we've got it. We know who that chain of command is to call first and who's going to be our spokesperson for whatever that situation is. I'd say we try a little bit more to stay on top of what that crisis might be and anticipate it before it happens. And this might not necessarily be thought of as a crisis, but I'd say more like when there are new incident rates for autism. So we just recently dropped from 1 in 88 to 1 in 68 children. And so that's something that as soon as those CDC numbers come out, we're working on our strategy for figuring out how we're going to talk about it and what we want to say. So that's a little more of what we do than, the oh crap moment, for better words.
Yeah. Particularly with the stuff I'm doing with Homeland Security, it is all crisis communication, because right now the nuclear bomb has gone off in Speedway, Indiana, and we're dealing with 50,000 people who are dead and 300,000 people who are missing, and this is all like real time right now. So I'm taking a break from that to be here. It's very, very. The strategy basically is that we don't tell anybody anything that we don't know. And you got to be willing to say, I don't know, when they ask you questions, but we don't give out information that we're not sure of. It's really the basic thing. Can you repeat your question one more time? Because I want to make sure I'm hitting exactly what you're saying.
When you face a crisis, how do you use social media, only social media, to kind of inform the public about the crisis? Do you have a crisis communication plan in advance? And when you face the crisis, did you follow it exactly, or did you kind of deviate from it and realize that your plan didn't work?
Yeah, no crisis is the same. I mean, it's really hard to have a plan other than, like I said, we use hashtag, specific hashtags. If somebody's already using a hashtag for an event, and I'll give you an example. When the Red Cross, I was working for the Red Cross a couple years ago when that home exploded on the south side of Indianapolis. You guys remember the Richmond Hills neighborhood? Somebody had witnessed that event and put out the hashtag Indy Boom, which is kind of, nobody knows. Somebody heard of the boom and said Indy Boom. So what you kind of have to do in that situation is kind of hijack those hashtags and start using them yourself, and then transfer those into new hashtags. So make sure you get people in the conversation by using that, and that way they see your tweets because people are already following it, and then start using new ones, new hashtags. And we're doing that exactly with the Homeland Security stuff right now. Tom, sorry.
We got time for one more question, and I saw Tom. Go ahead.
Okay, a lot of people here, they connect with social to the external audience. I'm curious how you've gotten your internal audience, your coworkers, who don't have the fun job, to buy into what you're doing. How do you share your results with the rank and file, I guess?
So the question is, how have you been able to, convince your internal audience, your coworkers who maybe are not involved in social media, to participate in it or understand what you do?
Sure. So I can say that I have to make it fun for them, just as much as I think that it's fun. And so when I can translate my energy and excitement about it to somebody else and find out how they might be excited about it, then that gets them hooked a little bit easier. I also have to take off all the formalities of it. I think at one time somebody suggested to me when I was having trouble getting people to just get me content was to create a form that they could fill out and send content to me with. And I thought, wow, so I have to go to our website, find this form, and write what they basically wanted me to tweet that day. Like that's not going to work out so well, right? So being able to make it as easy for them. Instead of saying, I want you to write a blog, even though that's really what I want you to do, is I want to talk to you about the content on there. And let's have an email exchange or a phone call or sit down and just have that conversation. And then I'll do the heavy work for you. I'll turn that into an intro, a body, and a conclusion paragraph and put the links in there and all that kind of stuff. So for me, it's about making it as easy as possible for everybody else to get involved. And I try to be as accessible to them. You can message me on Facebook, you can tweet me, you can email me, you can call my cell phone, you can text me. I don't care what you do if you're giving me content to be able to talk about, to highlight you in your program. So just making it as easy as possible for them. And we're actually going to have a seminar here soon. We did one on just being brand ambassadors in general, kind of outside of social media, your customer service, those kind of things. But we're going to have kind of a seminar here soon for all the staff members to come together and ask me those questions, because sometimes they just don't know how to use Facebook, like put the @ sign and tag Easter Seals Crossroads when you're saying something positive about us. So turning them into those brand ambassadors and getting them excited and making it easy for them makes my job so much easier, and then we feel like one big happy family.
Yeah, I don't think it's so different internally from how it is externally, and that is just share and be there. And those of you who are marketeers know that earned media is the best form of media, right? That applies to sort of internally, at least from our perspective. When we start having people talk about us internally, and we share some of those stories, and all of a sudden people are very interested. People start to reach out, and you're open to all of that, right? There's another approach that could be, hey, we're going to do a road show, and we're going to spend a lot of time pulling together presentations and talk to everyone in our organization. And there's some value in that too. But I think folks aren't vested quite the same way as if someone else offers to tell someone about someone. That has a lot of credibility. And that's largely how we've done it. I think things change over time also. I think when you're sort of in startup mode, you are sort of doing it, you're acting, you probably have done a little bit of sharing internally, you've gained great sponsorship. You start sharing those stories and you have more and more people get interested in you realizing that you have an opportunity to scale some things internally. And that might be when you go to, okay, how do I think about putting this in a marketing context? How do I do a little bit of a road show? How do I invite others to participate? How to invite them to create content? Or maybe, hey, we had an innovation day at Lilly where NASA came and talked about how drug developers can participate in the International Space Station. Well, we had that person do a guest blog. He had never tweeted before. He had never blogged before. Those sorts of invitations go a long way to building an internal audience.
Do we still have a couple minutes or no?
You can finish your question for sure.
Okay, and some colleagues aren't going to buy into it. It is what it is. And you don't want to force people to get into social media if they're not willing and they're not passionate about it, because that's only going to harm the good that you've already done. But the best way to get them to buy in, I guess, is to make sure that you're very clear about your passion for it and what you're doing. Make sure that you tell them this is the good that we're doing. This is, these are the people that are interacting with us. This is, and if you can communicate that to your colleagues, then that you're going to have much more success getting them to jump into that stream. So, is that an answer? I don't know whose question was that. Tom, was that anything else you want to add to that? All right.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming out today. I want to thank Sarah, Jerry, and Jordan for being on our panel, and Jeremy for coordinating it. Thanks everybody. And to demonstrate the power of social and spreading the word, we actually have an out-of-state guest here today. Jared, sitting here in the back, works for Aspen Dental in social media, in town for an event, happened to hear about it on Twitter, and asked permission to crash, and of course we said it was that just shows the power of getting the word out, not just this event, but causes and awareness and education. Definitely recommend checking out the Indy SM hashtag afterward. You might find that Tom has tagged you in a very awkward photo. And other conversations, other imagery, and obviously if you have insights you want to share, it's great to do that, as well as connecting and following other attendees as well as the panelists and those of us involved here. So, panelists, I'm sure you'll stick around a little bit after if anybody has questions. There's still donuts and coffee left. And thanks everybody for attending, and stay tuned for future events. Thank you.